Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will talk about the performance of the upper house, that is Rajya Sabha, in the last 5 years. 248th session of the upper house of parliament came to an end on Wednesday. However, during the 10 sittings of this session, the productivity of Rajya Sabha was only 4.79% with 39 hours and 51 minutes lost out of the total 48 hours. Rajya Sabha Chairman M Venkaiah Naidu once again expressed his anguish on the issue and in his valedictory address gave a summary of the work done by Rajya Sabha in 18 sessions since June 2014. During the 328 sittings of the upper house in this period, only 154 bills were passed. In terms of the time available and the time utilized for taking up legislative business and the issues of public concern, the average productivity of the upper house was 60% during this period, with at least 8 sessions out of the total 18 clocking less than this average. On the brighter side, though, despite the disruptions and adjournments, several important bills were also passed in the upper house during this period. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Mr. Chakshu Roy, the head of outreach of PRS Legislative Research. We also have with us Mr. K.V. Prasad, senior associate editor of the Tribune, and senior journalist Shekhar Iyer is also with us in the studios. Welcome all of you gentlemen to Rajya Sabha TV studios. Let me begin with you, Mr. Iyer. In today's valedictory address, the Rajya Sabha chairman has broken a new ground by presenting a report of the last 5 years of the presentation of the work done by the upper house to the people. So, how do you look at this new initiative which has been taken to sort of let the people know as to what exactly have their representatives done, not only in this session but do a comparative analysis of what they have done in the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very important work which shows the functioning of the Rajya Sabha in these times, because by focusing on 5 years, in fact, the Vice President and Chairman of the Rajya Sabha has in a way expressed anguish that somewhere along we find the politics of the day seems to completely eclipse the functioning of the House. In fact, the period he has taken from 2014 to 2019, this is the period Narendra Modi got one of the huge mandate for any party in the last 30 years and formed the government. And since then we saw, since the BJP had a majority in the Lok Sabha, the functioning of the Lok Sabha was different. And where the government did not have numbers, particularly in the upper house Rajya Sabha, that functioning was different. Now, the comparison that has come out is that at least the House could function only for 60% of its time, which is a very, very sad indicator, because somewhere along we find what, if you recall, there was an interesting conversation between Finance Minister and leader of the Rajya Sabha, Arun Jaitley ji, and Sitaram Yechury, where each of them were telling one another it's the tyranny of numbers which is affecting the functioning of the House. Okay. In the sense that Rajya Sabha, the government did not have numbers and the opposition had numbers, and in the Lok Sabha, the government had numbers and the opposition did not have. Somehow these seem to reflect in the way the legislations are passed, way the houses are able to conduct business. The tyranny of numbers, an interesting aspect which has been brought out by you, Mr. Iyer. Let me bring in Mr. K.V. Prasad here. Mr. Prasad, when we talk about numbers, there are certain facts and figures. If you look at something which has been presented by the chairman, if you look at the numbers also, 154 bills passed during these 5 years, 2014 to 2019. The same figure during the period of 2009 to 2014. These 5 years, it was 188 bills, and 5 years prior to that, that is 2004 to 2009, this was 251 bills. So does that sort of verify the point which has been raised by Mr. Iyer, the tyranny of numbers, something which was witnessed in the debate as well?
Well, I would like to distinguish in a slightly different manner. Passage of bills or legislative agenda being forwarded is largely a business transacted when the government of the day and the opposition decide to work together on issues and policies. That is something which is primary to that. So both have to work together to make sure that the legislative agenda before the House is passed. That is one aspect. The numbers do count. Definitely, Lok Sabha, everybody knew we had a majority. And Rajya Sabha, the numbers did not stack up for the party in the power. But if you look at the same period to which you mentioned, whether the last 5 years or the 5 years previous to that, we have seen the same. What is the most unfortunate part I have been witnessing is people, when they are in opposition, adopt a similar tactics, and when they are in the government, the opposition, when it changes sides, adopts similar tactics. So positions change, but the way in which the conduct has been, because we had a leader of opposition who kind of once justified how adjournments or stalling of House is a perfectly legitimate tool available to members of parliament in the House. So it's not something new. So this is something, when they are in power, you have a different set of way at looking at. So this, I think, which largely reflects the fractious politics that has worked into it.
So all political parties will have to relook at their strategy and so how they, conduct themselves in the House.
That is a fact. The fact is, it's both houses. It's not just this House. If you look at the last 20 years, so we've had this kind of scenario when parties switch sides. The politics remains more or less the same, or the tactics remain the same, where the stalling of the House or trying to not allow the functioning of the House, proceedings of the House is lost.
But the way this 5-year report has been presented, Chairman specifically said that this is for the people, so that they know what their representatives have done over the last 5 years. So is this seemingly going to be should become rather a sort of a point of discussion?
No, this is good because one, the benchmark is set, like 5 years of the House of People, Lok Sabha's work, and the corresponding work done by the Council of States. So this is a very easy comparison and should be done, because then people will have a fair idea as to what kind of work was transacted, what kind of time was utilized, or how it was did not. So all that is good, because it corresponds with the government of the day. But otherwise, this House is a continuous House. So these numbers will continue. But 5 years will help you to analyze it from that perspective.
Okay, let's bring in Chakshu here. Chakshu, you've been dealing with these numbers for quite a long time now, and the kind of numbers we have in front of us in terms of the upper house's performance in the last 5 years. Do you see a specific pattern here?
So I think, Vishal, I think two interesting things have happened. Rajya Sabha was never the focus of attention, in our debate in this country. Lok Sabha was the directly elected house, and maybe I'm generalizing a little too much, but the focus was always on Lok Sabha. I think one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years is that when our constitution makers thought of Rajya Sabha, they thought of Rajya Sabha as a house of check, and that house of check really came to form and found its voice in the last 5 years. So that's one. The second is, Parliament in general has always been assumed as a place for government to transact its business, and once in a while for other issues to get taken up. So a majority part of the day for Parliament post lunch is always reserved for government business. But an interesting thing that happened in Rajya Sabha was that in addition to legislative business, what also got discussed was issues of national importance. So opposition or the ruling party, when they wanted to discuss issues, there were long discussions. And in fact, I remember a number of occasions in the last 5 years where when the opposition said they wanted a discussion, the treasury benches stood up and said, okay, we are ready, let's do it now. So I think that's the second good thing happened. I think the third thing that, I kind of, when I look at Rajya Sabha, I kind of noticed was, there was a lot of firsts that were established. It was after a very long time that there was a motion of thanks to the President's address, which saw an amendment, which was passed. I think it was Mr. Sitaram Yechury's amendment.
In the upper house.
In the upper house that happened. So that was a unique moment. The other moments were when Lok Sabha passed bills. Rajya Sabha said, oh, you know what, it has not been referred to a committee. We would want to examine this bill in much more detail and send it to a select committee. In fact, even today, the chairman said the reason we are introducing this bill is so that I can send it to a committee.
So performing that role of check and balance.
Check and balance. So I think that really happened. The point, which I'm a little disappointed about was, I wish more consensus could have been built.
Okay.
Because today when the term of the lower house finishes, all the bills which are pending in Rajya Sabha which have been passed by Lok Sabha will lapse. Right, a motor vehicles bill which concerns all of us, the consumer protection bill which concerns all of us, some of those will lapse, and obviously there are other contentious bills which will lapse, and that will just be a waste because a lot of time, effort and energy was put in both in Parliament and outside of Parliament. I wish more consensus could have been built so that some of these legislation could have gone through Parliament and be implemented for the country.
Okay, but there are a number of bills, as well as has been mentioned by the chairman, some very important bills which have been passed by the upper house as well in the last 5 years. But Shekhar, bringing you on the consensus part, that is something which seems to be the stumbling block here in terms of enhancing the productivity of the Parliament, and specifically per se the upper house when we are talking about Rajya Sabha. That is why we seem to be stuck at the number of 60% in 5 years. The rest 40%, a very considerable amount of time has been lost.
Yeah, consensus is very important for passage of bills, no doubt. But I think there are three aspects which Venkaiah ji has pointed out in his remarks on this report, which is one, that Rajya Sabha is also answerable to the people. Lok Sabha reflects the mandate given by the people, but at the same time that mandate given to the Rajya Sabha should also be reflected in way the Rajya Sabha, which is a permanent house, responds to that mandate. One. Two, Venkaiah ji has also pointed out that there is a dysfunctional pattern. He has used this term. There is a dysfunctional pattern to the functioning of the house. That the third point which Venkaiah ji has brought out is disruption, as Prasad ji was mentioning. Arun Jaitley had mentioned in the house that it's a weapon available or an instrument available to the opposition as a way of dissent. But can disruption be a pattern of parliamentary expression? That there is disruption and house is put in a suspended animation as it were.
Can it be a continuing mechanism?
That is what Venkaiah ji has said. You see, this report reflects that can opposition, because it did not get the mandate of the people, so therefore it should resort to blocking whatever the government wishes to on the basis of the mandate it has got and form the government in Lok Sabha. Because Venkaiah ji's observation is to raise the conscience of the house and its members and for a larger debate. What should because yes, Rajya Sabha's job being a permanent house is to offer the checks and balance. But in the name of offering checks and balance, should it be a permanent hurdle to any government that forms government? Because the situation in the Rajya Sabha will keep varying. Today this party may have majority, tomorrow that party may have majority in the upper house, and vice versa in the lower house. So I think Venkaiah ji's anguish is a matter of concern for all of us and for all the parliamentarians. You have to ensure, yes, consensus is required, but there will be situations where a consensus will not be possible. So in that case, there has to be a meaningful debate. But what we have seen is bills are not even being debated, because at the very informal stage or at the introduction stage itself, the demand is it should straight away go to the select committee. So thereby somehow trying to sabotage or put spanner in that mandate that has come to the government. After all, the new government that has come has to execute certain things on the basis of the mandate.
Okay.
So I think these are larger issues that have been raised.
Okay, Mr. Prasad, in that context, as Mr. Iyer has pointed out, the chairman also has appealed to the collective conscience of all the members. But one important aspect which Mr. Iyer also pointed out, and which has been said by the chairman as well, that this report should make the people at large think as to what their representatives are doing in the houses, be it the lower house or be it the upper house.
Certainly and I agree with what Shekhar has summarized, the way they interpreted the chairman's speech, that is the spirit behind it. He wants to raise the consciousness of people to kind of see how this is not helping, because people start looking at parliament with a different kind of with a different lens. Now, if you really look at the basic structure, which was idea was, this was a deliberative chamber, a chamber where if I were to look at a different model, what happens in the US Congress is they say if House of Representatives passes a bill, the Senate has a time to cool the tea. That's why they give a saucer. If you have a hot tea, this is how the debate was won when the Constitution frame was looked at in America. We don't have a similar, but it's more or less a deliberative chamber where you have the time and also reflect the concerns of the states, because members of the upper house are directly elected by the states. So there was a council of states, so that greater voice to the states was given. Over the years, this has somehow faded in the background. There have been conventions, some of them have been put aside for various reasons. So as a result, it's not just this government, even the previous government, there were many bills that were referred to select committee, simply because a bill which was passed by the lower house, the members of the upper house thought required a more detailed parliamentary scrutiny. There was a convention in 2004, 2009, the most bills automatically go to the standing committee, because that was the first reading. The house would do the first reading through its committee, and then come back to the house with the report and do the second reading, so on. But if a bill was passed, because if in a circumstance, so you allow the deliberative chamber to go through the process. The whole process of select committee came in at that point of time, because if one house passes the bill, it comes to the other house goes in for select committee, where it is a bipartisan. Largely Indian committee work has been bipartisan, because this is one reason why they don't open the committee proceedings for public, to allow that bipartisanship to work. And that has been, fortunately, that has been one good aspect of this parliament over the last 70 years, that bipartisan persists in committee meetings, largely.
Okay.
Now, this is how it exists. So I think this is important, that consensus does take place. It works in smaller, but once it comes it becomes grandstanding, quite possible, because politics and party pressures do work in.
Okay.
But I think I wanted to just, I heard my fellow panelists say something, but the bills which are with Rajya Sabha will remain with the Rajya Sabha. They don't lapse.
Okay.
The next house can automatically take up, or vice versa will happen, because bills which is the Lok Sabha will lapse.
Oh, because bills which are with Rajya Sabha are the property of the house, and Rajya Sabha is a continuing house, so they will continue. But let's come to another aspect, Chaksu. I will bring you here on the rules aspect of it. There are certain rules and procedures for the conduct of the house, and there was a two-member committee which was set up by the chairman, and the chairman did mention it, that the committee has given a report. So should relook at the rules of the way the proceedings should be conducted and managed is also a very important aspect here, to ensure that everybody follows those rules and procedures.
Vishal, I think that the chairman referred to the fact that he had formed a two-member committee which has now given a report, and he's going to refer that report to the general purpose committee of the House. I think the important distinction that we need to think about is the rules for Lok Sabha and the rules for Rajya Sabha are a little different when it comes to dealing with disrupting members. Lok Sabha changed its rules, I think, in 2001-2002, where it provided for an automatic suspension of members if they were disrupting and the speaker wanted to take action against them. In Rajya Sabha, the rule is a little different, and the rule is that a motion has to be moved for an action to be taken against an errant member, and very often that motion does not go through because the House can appeal to the chair that maybe another opportunity should be given. So one way to look at it is, and this Rajya Sabha rule has now existed for the last 50 years since Rajya Sabha has been working. So the idea is to look at the rules and see as to how the rules can be tightened to ensure better functioning of the House. But what would happen is, rules are not the only way this can be done. And the chairman also called about that MPs should reflect on their conduct and see as to how they are thinking about things, because disruptions can be caused for two reasons. One is you've been generous with time on the show, so all of us can have a say. But if a presiding officer does not give opportunities for people to speak, so people want to disrupt and say, oh, what, I want to have my say. But if enough opportunity is given for people to speak and disruptions still happen, then possibly the cause for disruptions is that the disruptions are more of a political tool to force the government to bend a certain way. I think very often what I saw in this last 5 years, the disruptions are not because of lack of time. On many occasions, Rajya Sabha sat for longer hours. I think the disruptions are more because of the fact that we want to discuss this now, or we don't want government business to happen because this has happened. I think, addressing that will be as equally important as addressing the rules, because changing the rules will just make it tighter. But no chairman or no presiding officer would always want to use harsh rules on the members to kind of expel from the house to get the house to work.
Okay.
I just wanted to, clarify. What I meant was our constitution provides a scheme of things for legislation to go through parliament. Legislations which are introduced in Rajya Sabha and are not passed by Rajya Sabha always continue to stay on the books of Rajya Sabha as long as they are not withdrawn. Legislation which was introduced in the Lok Sabha and are passed by the Lok Sabha and transferred to Rajya Sabha, still as per our constitution, if Rajya Sabha does not pass them, they would lapse. Similarly, legislation which has been passed by Rajya Sabha and transferred to Lok Sabha but not passed by Lok Sabha will also lapse. To give you an example, the Women's Reservation Bill that was there in the last Lok Sabha, it was a Rajya Sabha bill, it was passed by Rajya Sabha and it was transferred over to Lok Sabha. But before Lok Sabha could pass it, the term of the Lok Sabha got over, so the bill got lapsed. It becomes important because the work on all of these bills have to then start from
scratch again. Okay, let's staying with the issue of how the productivity of the house can be increased, and something on the rules aspect which Chakshu was pointing out, Cheka. Rules, he's saying, can't be the only thing which can go ahead and ensure that the productivity can be increased. But going by the way chairman, not only this chairman but the previous chairman has also, we've seen on several occasions, has expressed his exasperation of not being able to make both sides come to a consensus or let the house run. So in that case, the rules do become important.
No, rules do become important. I think what is on the chairman's mind is, see, he has held several rounds of discussions with leaders of the both sides. But he found that at the end of it all, even if there was an agreement in his chamber, subsequently when the house met, those agreements were never adhered to in letter or spirit in the house. Because again the politics took over. Either some party said something or the other, and we have seen another trend in this last, I would say at least in the last 2-3 years, where the regional parties who have their own regional problems and some of the parties which are facing their own internal crisis are coming, and straight away in the morning they come and they say we want to come into the well of the house and not allow the house to function. We have seen posters being held inside the house, particularly in a house like upper house, which is a house of elders. Posters being held and attempts to even block the view of the chairman or even those officers who are assisting the conduct of the business. So we have seen this kind of conduct which is unbecoming of a stature of being a members of the upper house. I think these are issues, larger issues, because politics of the day will always see the government and the opposition always at loggerheads and sometimes on the same side. But at least when it comes to conduct of the house, the same things can be expressed through speeches. The same things can be expressed through debate. And what the chairman or the chair has been insisting, either whether Venkaiah ji or his predecessors, was this: utilize the instruments that are available under the procedures. Whether it's adjournment motion or call attention motion or a special discussion, all these instruments are there. Why not members use it, give adequate notice, have a proper debate and get a proper response? So clearly all these aspects will have to be looked into. We are running short of time, but a quick comment, concluding one from you, Mr. Prasad, on the way forward from here.
Well, the way forward is all political parties who are in the house and will come back into the house, and whenever biennial elections happen, have to sit down and work together. What are the minimum things that we need to do? After all, if they don't deliberate on issues of public importance, which they think need to be done, for a simple instance, and I agree with what fellow panelist Mr. Roy said, changing of rules don't matter. We had the previous chairman who changed the question hour to 12 o'clock just to avoid the heat. But did it help? It didn't.
It didn't seem to have worked much. So as our panelists have pointed out, and as the chairman also said in his valedictory remarks, that the politicians, specifically the members of both the houses, and in this case the upper house, will have to apply their collective conscience to ensure smooth functioning of the house, and the people at large will have now much more content to go ahead and debate as to how even the upper house has functioned over the last 5 years. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha television.